Hey everybody, welcome to the Art of Creation show. I'm your host, Frank Fidel, alongside my amazing co-host, Rebecca Jane Boswell. Rebecca, how are you?
Hey, hey, I'm in Austin again, and you're still in Italy, but this time you're not in the same part of Italy as you usually have been broadcasting from. You've had an adventure today, Frank. What is up with you?
Man, I had the adventure to just put the cherry on top of the Sunday that has been the Italian adventure so far. Right now, I'm broadcasting from Catania, Sicilia. And where I went today is I flew in last night from Torino, and I rented a car, and I drove 2 hours into the mountains of Sicily to a small little village called Iadone. And I went there to get my grandfather's birth certificate, which is more than 100 years ago. And nothing's digitized in Iadone, right? It's like literally there are these leather-bound tomes that somebody has to open up and verify. And getting that done was surprisingly emotional, right? Like that sense that I completed it. This was the last document that we needed, and I wanted to take this home personally. I didn't want to fill out some online form and mail a letter and get something in the mail. I wanted to do this myself. I had been warned that Sicilian Italian was a little different than like regular Italian. And for me, the running joke has always been that, you know, when people kind of get jammed up about, like, you know, oh, my people were conquered by so and so. Like, for me, the joke has always been, like, I'm Sicilian. We were conquered by everybody except 4 guys from Hackensack, New Jersey, and I hear they're due any minute. Like, it's just like, conquered by everybody, right? And it's so funny because, like, I'm passing places like Syracuse, right? Syracuse, and, you know, New York, Syracuse, New York was named after this little town in Sicily. But, like, you also hear about Syracuse in the Iliad, right? Like, that's where,
Yeah.
you're right? Like, it's just like we're fucking famous and shit, right? Like, this little island nation has been conquered by everybody, most recently by Italy. So, right? So the thing is that, like, I'm in this office and I was talking to them about I need this document, and, like, my Italian is getting better every day, but they were asking me questions with words I'd never heard of before, and they were just machine gun firing vocab at me that faster than I could, you know. And I'm trying to do this Google Translate thing, and I'm trying to look up words, and I'm like, what I want to say, I know how to say. But when they start coming at me with words that I don't know, then I simply have no recourse but to ask them to slow down, write something down, check a dictionary, blah, blah, blah. And, like, the thing that was jamming her up was, like, what's your name? And I tell her my name, and she looks at the name on the birth certificate, and she's like, why does this American want the birth certificate of somebody who was born 100 years ago when their names don't match? Like, who are you to this guy that I should give you this birth certificate?
Oh.
Because it's my mother's father.
Yes, because it doesn't go through the, right, because it wasn't through the paternal line.
It wasn't through the paternal line. So she asked me what my name is. And the funny thing is that the Italian word for brother is fratello. So she asked me in Italian, are you his brother? And I misunderstood that to understand she was asking me, was my name Fridella?
Right, Fridella, yeah.
It literally, like, that's, I'm like, yeah, I'm from Fridella. And she's like, okay, you seem kind of young to be his brother, though. And I'm like, I'm not getting it, right? And then all of a sudden, somebody comes in back from a coffee break or a smoke break or something, and the other secretary in the room goes, hey, Laura, isn't your grandfather's last name Fradella? And she's like, see, I'm your husband. And, like, all of a sudden, she's on the phone with her husband, and it turns into this whole thing. Their grandparents, Fradellas, went to Brooklyn at the same time that my grandfather did. My parents grew up in the same neighborhood. Like, literally, I met my cousins. I met 4 people.
Are you kidding me?
Today, and I'm not kidding you, one of them was my fucking family. Like, the day I'm having, I just can't. it is the wildest fucking ride. And they were like, "Where are you sleeping tonight? Where are you going? Where, like, how can we?" Like, and all of a sudden, like, I was family.
How can we feed you?
How can we? Right, I'm getting a lot of this. I'm getting a lot of this. And like, so like, she calls her husband, who's working someplace else in town. And the next thing I know, her husband, who speaks English, walks into the room, and suddenly he's my live translator, and he walks me through the town, and like, once I was family, the floodgates opened, and I was like, okay, so let's roll the hard six here, okay? So I pull up the picture on my phone of my grandfather standing in the doorway of his childhood home, and I'm like, where is this door? I want to go to the door, and I want to take a picture. And I'm sorry, you're getting emotional again?
Oh, amazing. So are you getting emotional, or are you actually tapping into all of the energy of your grandfather, of all of this? Like,
right.
What are you aware of, right? Like, amazing.
Right. Boy, I'm just so, like, because I'm in the commune, like, it's like this, it's the office, like, it's like a small town, right? And so they're like, oh, that guy, hang on a second, I'll tell you where he lived. And like, literally just goes, checks another book. And like, oh, here's his address. And Felipe is going to walk you over there right now. And I'm like,
thank you.
What?
What else is
possible? A cup of coffee? And like, it was so funny because, like, what? Like, I'm serious. We were hugging and kissing. Like, everybody was so invested in this. It was a beautiful experience that these people were just so invested in me getting what I needed so that I could connect with my family and get this done.
Yeah.
It's fucking amazing. So
wow.
Yeah, and like, my car is parked, I kid you not, around the corner from my grandfather. So like, I'm on the side of the building where he lived. And he asked me like where I'm parked. We're walking through the center of town. I'm like, where are you parked? And I point to my car, and he said, oh, that's funny. It's right here. Like, you're right here. And here's my grandfather's place. And like, the building had been destroyed at some point. There had been some fire 50 years ago or something. And like, most of the building had been refitted except for the corner where the corner apartment where they had lived. And that doorway doesn't exist anymore. They had to replace it with something metal because it had burned away during the fire. And like, there's this old rusted door there. And in the front of the building where they actually lived, they had put in some kind of ramshackle makeshift barrier that got broken in, and there's a padlock around it. And it's just like, they've been gone for so long that like, it was never going to look the way it looked in the picture. But like, the energy of him being there and this sense of him walking through those streets and everything was so palpable. It's so real. It was just amazing, you know. And then I just took my camera and I spent about an hour and a half, 2 hours walking through the town and just taking pictures of every little thing, of like things that were new and things that had decayed. And like, it's still very much a living city, right? But it's also like, it was like 42 degrees Celsius. It's like 104 degrees in the shade. And I'm walking around and like, it's, you know, like I come across this lovely little path with this overhang of trees, and there are these park benches, and there's this, you know, kind of benches and a fence there, because you're sitting on the edge of a cliff and you get to look down into the valley of Enna, the province of Enna, where Ayadone is. And from this vantage point, you can see the entire town of Ayadone on this cliff face, on this hillside, with all the houses kind of like tiered. It's very much like not a flat place. I mean, it's
yeah.
My calves are feeling it, let me tell you. Because walking up and down these hills was amazing, but like, you get this shot and you get this sense that like, while I was there, people were pulling up on scooters and like in little cars and like just parked right next to it and got out with a bagged lunch and sat there on the bench and had their lunch. And like, there was really, like, you walk around the town and like, if you were going to go sit in place someplace and have lunch, this was it. This was all there was. Like, I was there for 2 hours. I saw the whole town. Like, that's all there is. And so, like, I got this sense of like my great grandparents did this. Like my great grandparents stood here and looked at their town and looked down into the valley, and you could see cows grazing and you could see somebody farming, and like I had to stop on the way back because sheep were crossing the road. Like I mean, like I'm in the boonies, right? Like time hasn't really moved here, and it's so funny because like they have an internet cafe, and we don't have those in America anymore because everybody has internet on their home now. Right? Like you don't need to go to a cafe to have internet. But really just this amazing experience. When I walked out my B&B this morning, I'm in Catania. I stayed here. When I stepped out of the Airbnb this morning, right outside the door of this B&B, there's a fresh vegetable market, like right outside the door. And so there's like dozens of stalls lining the street with fresh eggplant and fresh zucchini and fresh peppers and lemons and like anything that you can imagine that they can grow here. It's just out there in the morning, and like the street was filled with people who were planning their dinner that night. Like, oh, this looks good. I'll make this for dinner tonight. And it's just like you don't take this long view of shopping, right? Where like I have to shop for the week. You couldn't carry a week's worth of groceries, right? Because that's the thing. It's like, how much groceries can I buy? Well, how much can you carry?
Yeah.
Right?
And when it's all actually fresh and like full of water, it's heavy as opposed to like a bunch of dried out boxes of things.
Right. And so wild. You get this thing where like, there's fresh meat in a butcher shop that was butchered today. So like there's no preservatives, there's no fillers, nobody pumped that full of water to increase the weight and give it a more reddish color. It's red because they just slaughtered the cow.
Yeah, because there's actual blood in it. And blood is red.
You're gonna buy that steak right now, and then you're gonna go home and put it on a fire, right? Today. You're gonna do that today. You're not buying 40 pounds of meat that you'll cook over the course of a week or a month because you're gonna freeze some of it and you're gonna blah, blah, blah. You're gonna buy meat every day or every other day, depending on how often you eat it. And that lifestyle is just, it becomes so casual. We're like, I'm walking on my way somewhere, and I can't help but walk through an open air market. So like while I'm walking, it's like, oh, I'll just do this now while I'm walking through here, and I'll grab this and I'll grab this, and there's my dinner. 1 second. Sorry, I'm getting so emotional.
It's awesome. So can you actually hear me being emotional over there? Well, and Frank, I know at least from where I'm sitting, I'm really grateful to hear you tell about your day and about all, these amazing things where, one, I just want to acknowledge everything that you've been choosing, okay? And choosing forward, and also like, it's so interesting to me. It's like when you're talking both about acknowledging the past and sensing into all the energies of the past for you, and you're also acknowledging all of the present, and how much, like what you're talking about right here is really how much people there are both living in the past and so much living in the present. So not living in the past of like, the trauma drama, but just like acknowledging that the past is all around them. Like they are in living history, and in the present so much more of like, okay, well, what's today like, and what's right now, and oh, the smell of the eggplant, and oh, the like that meat, oh, my body is saying that's for dinner, like being here and now. And I'm also just wondering too about, this, like all this with, with this experience about your grandfather and then meeting your family. And like, I just get this piece of where like, sometimes like we have this sense of who we are in the world. And, sometimes it feels like there's something missing, right? Like we have this idea that there's something missing. And it's almost like, when you're telling me this story today, I'm just getting the sense of you kind of like acknowledging all the energies that are part of you, the infinite being. And that there's like this whole piece that was just sort of unacknowledged or like a void. And you just like, you just opened all of that and it all came rushing in, and now you have access to all of that too. And it's like, I just get how like this for you, you know, it's amazing.
I was totally the black sheep of my family because I never placed that kind of value on the family unit, you know, because I always felt like the black sheep. I always felt very separated from it. I did separation all of my life because I didn't align and agree with a lot of what that was. And so I was made wrong for a lot of stuff. And so you learn to just kind of separate and just be you. And like, you know, a lot of times for a lot of people, the only way to fully be yourself is to not allow other people to interfere, right? Like you just can't let them, like if you are a still pond, you can't let other people go in there splashing around. Like it's just, that's not who I am, man. Right? Like this kind of, and like when I started this thing, everybody was like, oh man, this has got to be such a great thing for you to connect with. And like I started this thing, I swear to you, I started this thing with like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm just going to get some documents and I'm going to file some paperwork and I'm going to have citizenship. Like it's not a thing, right? Like emotionally, I don't connect with this. Like it's just paperwork. And then I got here on the last bit of it. Like after all the paperwork had been gotten, this one was different. And I knew it was different when I decided to take the trip to come and get it myself.
Yeah.
And that was such, there was an unlocking of something in me. There was a willingness to be that thing that I had never been willing to connect to before, that piece of family that I'd never been willing to have. And all of a sudden, these people that I thought were strangers, I'm sitting in an office, and all of a sudden, I'm surrounded by family. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and you know, all those places where we think that that we have to separate to be who we be, right? And it's like, wow, okay. And when we do separate, it's like we're actually locking out all these other possibilities and energies that we could be receiving, whether we agree with them and align with them or not. And it's like you went and you chose this, not really having a sense of like what you wanted to get out of it, except for papers.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it was like all of this other magic unfolded and was able to come in. And, you know, I mean, if you lived every day with these people, you know, you might get annoyed with them too. Sure. And yet the thing is, you know, how much of the energies that you be and that, you know, that you could play with and the capacities that you have are actually now more available to you by receiving everything that is through that whole, I mean, I almost get this like energy blitz or like lightning blitz all the way down your like family tree, you know, where it's like to that point of creation thing of like, and like, I'm like, oh, like you just plugged yourself in. And do you need to be the effect of any of it? No. Does having a connection mean that now you're greater than or more valuable? Or no. And yet there's nothing that you're cutting yourself off from. So when we can receive everything, we can choose anything.
Right. Exactly.
And you have that now. How cool.
You know, one of the things that I love was about that sense of there's the sense of the past because you're surrounded by it, right? Like I'm standing in a town that is older than America by like a factor of several magnitude, right? Like nothing, no building in America is older than, like those are new buildings where I was, right? Like those are the new buildings. The American, oh, that's cute. Oh, they're 200 years old. That's cute, right? The really cool thing about what you said was that yes, there is this constant sense of the past because they're living in it, right? Because those streets have been worn smooth, by 1,000 years of foot traffic, right? It's astounding. There is the sense of the present because they very much live in the present. They live in where they don't live is the future.
Yeah.
So there's none of this, oh, I wish the internet would hurry up and get here. I wish that new iPhone model would get here. I wish, like, there's none of this anticipation that the future is on its way, or they've been waiting for it, or whatever. Like, it's just the past and today. That's all there is. And there's something really liberating about not constantly being in anticipation of the next new thing, of the next, even when we talk about politics in America, we're constantly looking at the next round of elections. Like, we're never living in the now, right? Everything is about what's next. When is my next meeting? When is my next thing? Where am I flying to next? When's my next class? What am I doing? And it's all of this stuff that sits on you that is anticipatory of a present that doesn't exist yet. And that's just not the Italian way. It's just not, right? And it's like, I kind of get the feeling that, like, you know, it's like the way this trip happened for me, where, like, I didn't plan it months in advance. Like, I was sitting there on Monday, and I decided I was just going to go do this on Wednesday. And so I just flew out on Wednesday. Like, I literally just booked the ticket, and I booked the B&B, and I booked the car, and boom, 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 I'm here. I'm doing it. It's done. Right? Tomorrow I leave. And, like, it wasn't a huge interruption in my life. There was no significance to it. It was just like, this is something that I was going to do, so I might as well do it. Wednesday, I'm free Wednesday. Yeah. So this whole thing has just been an amazing experience. The entire Italy adventure, which is still ongoing, mind you.
Yeah. It's just beginning.
Yeah. So when we looked up that woman, Laura, we looked up her grandfather, who had left Iadone. And when he left, he went to France. So there are Fridellas that had emigrated to France as well as America. So it's just so wild that, like, you know, part of that clan went to Brooklyn, part of that clan went to France, part of our clan went to Brooklyn. My mother's father went to Brooklyn. And so, like, all of these people are there. And it's like the woman was saying, and she said it in Italian, but what she was saying was that the people who went and emigrated to Brooklyn are not just Italian. They're not just Sicilian. Brooklyn is very much Iadonese. The people of Iadone went to Brooklyn. And it's like now I understand the entire cuisine of everybody that I knew, right? Because this wasn't, like, when you have an arancini, right, this rice ball, which is, like, filled with stuff and leftover risotto and then breaded and deep fried. It's delicious. But our arancini is filled with a little meat, a little sauce, a little ragu, and then raisins and pine nuts. Why? Because we're like half an hour from North Africa.
Yeah.
And that's where pine nuts come from, right? Whereas, like, northern arancini won't have that, because those weren't the ingredients that they had on hand. And the entire thing about arancini is simply that this was day-old risotto, right? I needed to do something with the day-old risotto and the leftover sauce that I had, so I'm just going to take that. And it was a meat sauce, so I'm going to put I'm going to put that and wrap some day-old risotto around and fry. Here's a new dish for you. Right? But it wasn't meant to be a culinary masterpiece. It was just like, what do I do with the leftovers?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. So this has been amazing, and I don't know how long we've been talking.
Well, long enough, and you know, but like, I know that this is an invitation. At least I could speak for me. You know, all those places where we have a sense of something that we would like to create, and then that litany of reasons and justifications that starts to come up of, like, why you can't, why it's not reasonable, you know, blah, 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 blah. And then all the evidence for why those are all real. You know, when all that stuff comes up, it's like, okay, and what if I was actually just choosing for me? And what if I was following the energy? And what if I was actually creating my future with the choices that I was making today? And your story today, you know, I see that as a huge invitation, right? Because there's so many things that could have kept you from even being willing to step into the possibility of moving, or even asking the questions
So
get you to move to Italy, let alone, you know, all the things that have come after that. And I just, you know, I just wonder how many people are watching and looking at this. And, you know, I wonder, like, for you who's watching, what is it that you would like to be creating? What is it that this brings up for you where you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did that. And like, oh, I would love to do this thing or be that thing. But I could never do it. It's not the same. Like, what if it is?
So
And what could we all be choosing?
Right, my brilliant co-host has just hit the nail on the head here. And I was thinking about this on my drive back, where so many people have a point of view about why this wasn't possible, why it wasn't even a good idea. Why would you want to leave America? Why do you want to leave your family? And like all of these points of view. And had I decided to align and agree with any of them or resist and react to any of them, both of those options would have removed me from the one thing I actually needed, which was choice.
Yeah.
Right? When you remove resistance and reaction and alignment and agreement, what you have left is choice.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, 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 we have a winner, right? Like, that's it, man. That's it. If you can get out of alignment and agreement and resistance and reaction to other people's points of views, even your own points of view about stuff.
Especially your own points of view.
If you're willing to have choice, you can choose anything you want.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if you're like, yeah, but what if, yeah, so what if? Choose again.
Right. Right.
Right? There's no statute of limitations on choice. Like, doesn't work? All right, cool. You learned something. Choose again.
Choice creates awareness, right? So every step along this journey, every time I made a choice, I had the awareness that I was going the right way, right? That this felt light for me, and this continued to feel light with every choice I made. If at some point I'd gotten a real heaviness around it, I would have asked other questions.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like I made a plan, I'm sticking to the plan. You know, torpedoes be damned, and like I could have walked us all into ruin, but I didn't, because I was aware. Like I was willing to just keep asking questions and be aware and follow the light, what felt light for me.
Yeah.
And it's creating a wonderful future for not only myself, but for Danny and the boys. And I'm just so grateful that we chose it, and that we followed through on it, that we just choosing. And we talk about this on the show sometimes. We're like, being creative isn't as great as adding action, right?
Yeah.
Creativity plus action is creation, right? And that's what we do. We're creating a new life here, but that requires action on our part. Aside from like, wouldn't it be swell if we lived in Italy? Well, let's take some action. And now we're living in Italy.
Yeah.
So,
sitting in your house and wondering why you suddenly aren't in Italy when you've never actually like bought a ticket. Like that's one thing you could do to start that process. Yeah.
So,
oh, awesome. Well, Frank, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I wonder, for all of you who are watching, what is it that you've been looking at, that you'd like to choose, that you just haven't been willing to choose yet, or put your creativity into action around? And if you'd like to share what some of that is, and you'd like to post it on the Facebook page, we'd love to see what that is, and we'd love to bring that into our shows coming up. And of course, if there are any topics or conversations or questions that you'd like explored, please share that as well. And yeah, what can this show contribute to you, and how much fun can we have?
And thank you,
so Frank, yes,
today. Thank you so much, and thank you to all of you watching. It's been a real joy for us to share the show with you, and to receive your comments and your notes and your letters. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, and how can we all out-create ourselves, right? There is no competition except for with ourselves. And if we were actually going to choose all that we could choose and create all that we could create without any attachment to any of it, just for fun, what would you choose today, and how can we all out-create ourselves right away? And we'll talk more about it next week.
Yeah. See you next week, everybody. This has been The Art of Creation Show. I've been your host, Frank Friedel, alongside the beautiful and talented That does it for this week's show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Frank Friedel, along with Rebecca Jane Boswell. We'll see you next time. Ciao.
Bye, guys.